I would assume I can start nevertheless. So we waited 1 minute. So good morning to all of you. I would like to welcome you to our webinar. Today's webinar is part of our seminar series, Mastering Compliance Governance in Anti-Financial Crime. And today's topic is how to manage regulatory change effectively and efficiently. So we're talking about this specifically, and if I'm saying we talk about that, I mean my colleague Khan and me. We both are somehow experienced consultants in the area of compliance and anti-financial crime risk and compliance. And we are part of MSG Rethink Compliance. MSG Rethink Compliance is part of MSG. MSG is an international group with more than 10,000 consultants working in 33 locations, or in 33 countries, even more locations, but in 33 countries worldwide. And we've been able to reach 1.3 billion euros in revenue by end of fiscal year 22. So that's the MSG group. MSG Rethink Compliance is, let's say, the part of the group focusing on anti-financial crime. So we are naming ourselves as the AFC compliance experts within the MSG group. And besides the typical topics that you see here on the slide, one part of the rethink in our name is always to make sure that in regards to the risk and compliance program, to, let's say, act smarter, to build it in a smarter way than we experienced it in the past, to be more effective and also to be more efficient. And that's why we've been able to also discuss not only screening and monitoring solutions, but also risk and governance solutions. So by saying that, I would like to come over to some logistic topics of our webinar. So instead of just providing you some front-side presentations, we would like to act more interactive with you, and therefore we ask you to join our polls. So we have, I guess, in total 4 questions prepared within this webinar. You can join those polls by either using the link, the URL link that is given here on the site. We will also provide within the seminar chat the link so that you can only click on it and then you can use your browser participating in the poll. Or you can do it by your mobile phone, just scanning the QR code and then feel happy to answer the questions. So this kind of slide will be also available when we ask you to join the polls. Of course, it's up to you whether you would like to join it or not. But it's always, I guess, a good exercise. First of all, we get your feedback. Second of all, it's always interesting to discuss the poll results directly in the webinar. So thank you upfront for joining this poll. Furthermore, you are all muted. But nevertheless, you've been able to communicate with us by using the question and answer chat that is available to you. So feel free to ask your questions. We reserved some time at the end of the webinar for the Q&A part, and hopefully we will find the appropriate answers to your questions. You have 2 options. You can just ask your questions as the user you are in this webinar, or you can also choose the anonymous way to send your questions. And of course, even if you have questions afterwards or would ensure that it's only us receiving your questions and interact with you afterwards, you can just use your email and send us your questions via email at info@msg-compliance.com. So there is some room for interaction also in this webinar. And as a frequent participant of our webinars, you know that typically our agenda is between 3 to 4 points. I already mentioned one, that's the Q&A session. So at least there are 2 to 3 other ones I need to introduce you to. As we're discussing how to manage the legal change process, first we would like to give you an overview about this process. Second, we would like to give you an idea about the challenges in this process and how to master it to come around those challenges. And third would then be Khan's, mainly Khan's topic, to demo some practical use cases directly in the software to show up ways how to automate this legal change process. And last but not least, we have the question and answer sessions. So I would say let's start with the first topic and have a discussion about what's all in this change management process. So first of all, you have to think about your data room. So all available data about your regulations. And if we talk about regulations, legal change is not only about regulations. It's regulations, of course, it's guidelines. If we talk about anti-financial crime, it's also about typology papers. You get those typology papers sometimes from your FRU. You might get it from your central banks. You might get it from international bodies like FATF or others. You have enforcement cases, in some countries more public, in other countries less public, but those enforcement cases typically helps you to interpret the regulation along with the guidelines in a more concrete way. So that you might identify some obligations out of that. And of course, you also would like to look a little bit into the future, what's going on, what kind of draft regulations are coming up, what kind of consultations are around those draft regulations, and so forth. So this list can even be longer, and it gives you just an impression about what kind of documents do we need to, I would say, manage somehow within this legal change management process. So you bring all these documents into your data pool. And of course, just thinking about anti-financial crime, we're talking about roughly on an international phase, about 3,000 documents that you have to screen. And the dynamics I will discuss later. So, but let's assume it's only 300 documents. Some have 50 pages, some have 300 pages. It's a sort of chaos if you just try to handle them in your data room. So, of course, as a management principle, you would like to bring it into a structured process. You plan something, you do something, you check, you act. And in more detail, that means, first of all, you have to identify the documents, whether it's a duplicate, whether you have it already, whether it's new, whether it's a change, and whatever. When it's new or it's a change, you have to have an impact analysis. You have to do an assessment. So to be prepared for a decision-making process, what needs to be implemented by whom, till when, and what kind of a review cycle you need to set up on this specific topic. That's how you try to structure the whole legal change management process. It wouldn't be an important process if there would not also be a maturity model behind that process. And of course, there is one that is always common. That's the ad hoc way to manage something. So I'm getting aware about the European Union AI Act, just for example. That's because a colleague of mine told me, or I had a discussion, whether it's over ACAMS, whether it's over, I don't know, international compliance association or whatsoever. So somehow this information comes to me. I'm in charge. So I'm looking for the European Union AI check. And of course, if I don't get this information, I would not look at it, and I might get into a regulatory risk situation. And you would like to, let's say, get rid of it. And that means you now just try to integrate it from a topic focus into a departmental or into an enterprise focus, and do the coordination and integration alongside the whole maturity model. And that means that on the far right side of the maturity model, you have the adaptive situation where you have a change here coming in. The system identifies the impact and not only tells you what to do, but also is changing all necessary documents, processes, and so on, so that everything is trying to stay compliant automatically without any further work on your side. That's, of course, the future. And there are plenty of topics that needs to be or that are, I would say, bumps in the road at the moment. So even if this technology approach to become adaptive would be able, there are some regulatory topics, there are some organizational topics. At the moment, I would call bumps on the road. So adaptive is the future. But nevertheless, it would be annoying if we would not know anything that we can look for also in the future. On the other side, by the way, on the other axis, you have the way on how to integrate the legal change process into your risk and compliance management program, into the processes that you defined there, and into the depending IT architecture to get this all done. So I guess that's the first part where we would like to get some opinions from you, and I would hand over to Khan to start with the poll. Wherever my screen is not changing. Here we are, Khan.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, I would like to give you also some moments to be able to join our Menti call. So the instructions are displayed here one more time, but you can also follow Aura directly in the chat. So I will switch now to our survey, and we can have a look together on the first question. So I see we already have six of you joining the poll. I might want to give you some more seconds before we start with the first question. All right, so thank you. Let's go with the first question. So you just learn a bit about this maturity matrix that Dirk just presented, and now we would like to know your opinion on where you see yourself, even your organization, on that maturity matrix. There is a little pin. You can place it, drag in to the place where you see yourself, and then just press the submit button, and then we can see the live results coming in. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I think the results might be very interesting for you as well. So to see how your peers are doing, or how they do yourself. So if you want, you can still join our poll. As I said, the link is posted in the chat, even if you don't see the instructions anymore. Yeah, but as I can see, we had this webinar held or held yesterday in Germany as well, and we had some similar results, to be honest. And we have a majority more on the left-hand side, more on a fragmented and managed maturity level, but we did also have two answers on the agile and adaptive maturity level.
And I need Kana, I need to ask the one participants that choose the agile and the adaptive positioning to maybe just reach out to me via LinkedIn or via email, because I would really be interested, especially on the adaptive one, how that was done, because that would be the best I have ever seen then in my experience, which is a 25 years long experience in regulatory compliance. So the analysts and also our experience, to be honest, is between the fragmented and the management side. So what we always see as best in class are the ones who are on the integrated side. But the majority of the enterprises are on the management level or on the fragmented level on the way to come to the management stage. So that's what the analyst provides you. And nevertheless, it's very interesting. Yeah. It's as you mentioned, it's nearly the same situation whether you do it on an EMEA scale or whether you do it on a German-speaking market. That's interesting.
And I just hope that those are not the same two participants from yesterday joining.
Maybe.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, let's move on to the next question. Thank you so far. And we also have some more participants joining our poll. It's great to see. So now, after having assigned yourself to that maturity level matrix, now the question is, are you happy actually with the level of the maturity that you are currently at? So at least we, as similar to yesterday, we expect at least 2 yeses. But yeah, we'll see.
Oh, you never know. You never know. So even if you are adaptive, you might not be comfortable with the situation. The question might be what's coming after adaptive. So that might be interesting.
Yeah. But of course, those of you who are on a managed or fragmented part, you could still be happy because it might still be sufficient and also adequate to the level of complexity, for example, at your organization, complexity of the processes. So we just said at least 2 yeses, but of course, there are more. Yeah, we have 4 of you who are happy, but the majority, as we expected, also would like to at least improve on the process, on the quality maybe of the process of the legal change management.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Then I think we have one last for this round. So now we are interested in your opinion, so you can type in short buzzwords, keywords, what you see the biggest challenges are if you want to climb to the next maturity level. So you can provide us 1, 2, 3 responses, click the submit button, and then we see the cloud, text clouds coming in. And yeah, it's also interesting in your opinion here as well. Missing technology, yeah. And of course, the bigger the text is, the more answers on the same wording we have. So let's see, quality is now the biggest part. Yeah, so we give you some. Yeah,
it was also yesterday. Quality was the main topic, I would say. seems to
volume
be here
yesterday.
as well. I'm not sure whether we had timing yesterday, but it's also a very interesting topic and definitely a challenge.
Yeah. Great. Technology is getting.
Technology is now moving ahead. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, but it fits quite well to the maturity matrix, because when we have this more integrated level, it includes definitely more technology on that part.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you
So
very
good.
much.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's move on with our presentation. Please, Dirk, you can go ahead.
So let's continue with the challenges in this process and how to master them. So it's the same process I introduced you to, and then just have a look on some of the challenges here. So I guess quality was one of the topics you will not find in here, because the process is agnostic, whether you do it manually or whether you do it supported by technology. So quality, in a wider sense, is, let's say, the main challenge overall. So that means if it's about do it in the right time, it's a quality issue. Do it in the right quality. That's either people or a technology issue. And let's say if it's a budget issue, then you might can choose whether you would like to descope quality or timing. And if we talk about regulatory change process, as we do it here, that's in most of the cases not an option. So you need to focus on technology, you need to rely on technology, and also you need to rely then on the quality of the topics. And the way you can do it is about automation. If you have a high volume, a high velocity, you have a high change frequency. I mentioned roughly about 3,000 documents in the anti-financial crime space. So I had a discussion beginning of this week about ESG and sustainable finance topics, where I made a research, and it's about 1,600 pages of regulation just only for Germany and the European Union. If you are an international institute, having subsidiaries in London, in South Africa, in New York, in Singapore, whatsoever, we talk about only for ESG and sustainable finance, we're talking about 3,600 pages of regulation. It's only regulations only. We're not talking about comments, interpretations, guidelines, and so on, only about regulations. And as it's a quite immature regulation, meaning it's not that long on the market, the frequency of the annual change is quite high. So it's a little bit about 15% or higher on an annual base. Whereas on the anti-financial crime, it's in between 10-15% range of annual changes. And that's, of course, always depending on the market. So if you look on the European Union with the AMLA coming up, there's a lot of change going on at the moment, or it's even more change than it was the years before. So it's always from a year to year depending, but it's always about more than 10%. That's for sure, and you need to manage it. You need to manage it in time, and as I mentioned, and you already mentioned, in quality. It's also about the convergence between those topics. So if you're looking on one regulation, it typically refers to other regulations. So you have to always keep that in mind, and that's also part of the quality topic. And the next topic is you need to bring it into the relation of your business. So whether this is relevant for you or whether it's not relevant, and if it's relevant, is it relevant for the whole group that you are responsible, or for a specific entity, or for a branch office only? So that's those are the challenges here, just to name a few. And now my control gets into the next poll. It's the last question we have. So in case you stayed on the existing poll, you should now see the next question.
Yeah, I think most of the participants stayed in the. Oh, okay. So let's give you some more seconds for our last question.
Yeah. So the question is, which steps along the LCM process do you find most challenging? So we definitely took the quality out of this decision, because quality is all over, as I mentioned already. So let's give you some seconds. It's always interesting. So the decision making is never a problem. It's monitoring and reporting. So in reality, I figure out some issues and some challenges on the decision making as well, because you often have decision makers that are requesting more and more information, and you never get it done that way. Took too long. There is no transparency on about who is doing what, and so on. So there are challenges here, but as expected and as shown in further polls, in past polls that we did, the impact analysis and the assessment is the most challenging topic. And that relates, of course, to the implementation question and the monitoring. The review and update process is obviously not that challenging, which is also interesting, because what we found out is that there are few customers out there, few institutes who built this kind of an integrated risk and compliance program already. They used tons of Excel, SharePoint, and so on, which works for the first 2-3 years. But then the maintenance costs of this platform, of this integrated integration scenario, was increasing year by year. So of course that's not really a solution, because that's always following the same principles: do it harder than do it smarter, from my perspective. But yeah, great. So it's a very good outcome for this poll. So let's continue. What are the analysts mentioning about the legal change process? So I was using Gartner here as a source. They came up with the research that was mainly driven by the pandemic situation, of course. So I just added a few comments here below the chart, but the chart is from September 2022 from Gartner, and I used also their expressions like Reg Intel, meaning that stands for Reg Intelligence or Regulatory Intelligence. To be honest, I guess the more common expressions here are either FinTech or RegTech. But nevertheless, it's about technology-assisted regulation intelligence, as they call it. And that's what we're talking about. We have the legal change management process, and we're looking about how to use technology to support it and to get into a more in a better automation way, by ensuring the quality and by ensuring the same effectiveness, or either being more effective. That needs to be discussed as well. So, and it's about how companies are investing. So they started to invest very much in law firms. Then they figured out, obviously, that can be quite expensive. So better build some in-house experts. So invest in own human capital to compensate some of the law firm engagements, or at least to bring them down, which is shown here. But then you come to a point where the cost reduction, or at least staying with the same annual cost rate instead of increasing it, which is also a cost reduction, means to get more and more automation into it, where then the investment goes more into the technology-assisted regulation intelligence. And I'm not sure whether you can remember, as nearly 1 year ago, I mentioned what is the big difference between compliance work in the US, Asia Pacific, and in EMEA. And the main difference is that in the US, they already did more investments into technology to get a better degree of automation in their compliance work, whereas the investments within EMEA and Asia Pacific mainly goes into stuff and not into that much technology. And that's changing, obviously, that needs to change also in our perspective. And using technology helps you also to get a much better transparency on your risk-based approach, because the risk-based approach helps you to define what kind of in-house experts do you need and what kind of external expertise from the law firms you still need, because you will not replace them at all. We will just always try to automate what can be automated, and then some legal advice, some specific expertise in specific areas might always stay with those law firms. And this risk-based approach that is made transparent by using RegTech or FinTech technology helps you to further bring your costs down, or at least keep them stable, and is supporting the processes like the legal change management process. So talked about the challenges, about how the analysts are looking on that one. So now if we talk about this regulatory intelligence or RegTech FinTech solution, I just have a sort of a business architecture pinned on this slide on how to get it from the managed maturity level at least into the integrated and beyond. So of course there is some regulatory changes or regulations that coming in. You need to manage. You have your policies and procedures, because at the end, and controls, don't forget the controls here. So because the policies, procedures, and controls are interpreting the way you deal with the risk and the obligations you identified. And of course, as I mentioned, the risk assessments, you did some risk assessments, you have to do continuous risk assessments, and the risk assessments are linked to the policies, definitely, but more on the procedure side and definitely on the control side. So you can bring together those data points and can align them, and then try to automate. The question is, what's with the quality? That was one of your major topics. So first of all, one quality issue is we ensure data governance, or you have to ensure in this kind of a business architecture, the data governance. The data governance within this integrated scenario, but also in regards to the APIs, because on the API side, you might need to integrate your core banking system, whether you have a CRM system, definitely your CRM system. If you already have a GRC system, governance, risk, and compliance, for those who are not are not comfortable with the GRC acronym, you might have a matrix stream already in place. You might have Archer in place. That's all good. Part of policies and procedure management, some processes are defined there. It's all done, it's all given, but it's not adaptive. It's not dynamic. So if you build such a dynamic environment, just make sure it needs to be also integrated into your existing system that you use for your GRC system, because you don't need to write your policies new. You don't need to build your procedures new. It's just about using the technical metadata out of those documents and some business metadata that we can derive on those documents to manage this interaction. And of course, you would like to have your Excel and PowerPoints, the PowerPoints for your upper management presentations, and the Excels to ensure that you can crunch the data and manipulate the data so that the PowerPoint is looking always quite nice, even if the system's showing you the real truth of the data. I missed those lines in here, so sorry for that one, but I already explained that you can bring together those data points to, from a theoretical perspective, build this kind of an adaptive solution that was mentioned on the maturity matrix. But you always have and that's in most of the regulations the case, and seen by most of the regulators, at least as of now, you have to put the human in the loop. So it's not that you really can have this automated adoption of all the systems. You always have to have the human decision maker in between. But that's okay. And for some validations and quality assurance, you always also might need humans in place. So it's not about replacing humans. It's just about automating some stuff to give some freedom to your staff doing the topics that they are employed for, and not doing these data crunching stuff, filling Excels, or at least working through all these regulations on a manual base, and then have those discussions within your teams. Just get it prepared for the decisions that you need to do. Make the decisions by the humans, and then you ensure the quality, you ensure the degree of automation, and have your budget under control. And you are a much better in time in your whole procedures, and you always have the transparency about the question who is doing what till when. So when can I expect it's ready? But also the transparency that you whether you get a leading auditor into your headquarter, or whether it's on one of the foreign entities, you get an auditor in, that you can always show the integrity and the consistency of your risk and compliance model. With saying that, I would hand over to Khan to give you some practical use cases, to demo some practical use cases, and the use cases, as far as I know, Khan will focus on the regulatory change process, but also on the policy and procedure topic. So yeah. I hand over to you.
Yes, thank you very much. That's correct. Of course, we would like to provide you some examples on how to get more to that integrated maturity level. That is just parts. Of course, we cannot show all of it like a fully integrated example today, but we would like to start with the monitoring and analyzing the regulatory changes, followed by one example on how to implement the new regulations by creating or setting up a new policy or new procedure as a follow-up on a regulatory change, for example. So now we would like just as an example show you and demonstrate you on an application on how to automate and support you with the process of observing identifying new regulatory changes. So you will log into a platform that provides you with all the relevant functionalities. Some statistics, of course, are important for the overall governance process and help you with the reporting aspect as well. But today we would like to focus on the crawling feature, which is the first step for identification of new regulatory changes. And in that example, we have the possibility to adjust search parameters according to your individual needs. For example, you can limit the regulation, limit regulator, or even down to specific web pages that you want to monitor for legal changes. But of course, a more open search is also possible, but then the data maintenance afterwards might be a little bit more extensive than when you can be more specific. Next to the ad hoc searches, you should be able to plan searches as well, so that you have something running on a regular base in the background, and you will get notified actively if changes have been made. And so you can, for example, create different searches for different purposes. So for example, for a more urgent topic such as sanctions, you can have like a daily scheduled search, whereas for other topics, a weekly search would be sufficient. So after you have, or the application or the solution has identified new regulatory changes, new regulatory documents, then the hard work will come. So we have integrated AI technology in order to help the analysis process that was more manual, quite resource extensive, because you need to work through all the documents and start to identifying the key features, the key requirements, the key messages out of these documents, and then start your decision-making implementation process as illustrated before during the presentation. So what would help in that process is to have an automated process to help you with this manual work. What we have here is a so-called repository where we store all the relevant regulations that we have identified through the web crawler. And let's go here to one example of that new BaFin document, and all these attributes and meta information you see here have been extracted by a large language model, so which should help you with the first step of the analysis. So you will receive a good overview before having done your analysis yourself and get an overview. You get related information such as related obligations. So the AI technology here, specifically the large language models, will be able to identify obligations that can be extracted from the documents themselves and create obligations here for you, and as well as related regulations and documents. So what you see here is for example, a further feature that helps you to validate the information that have been extracted automatically, so that you have a quality assurance aspect bring into the process as well. So you will be able to get the corresponding text within the document, and you will also be able to open detailed view for the obligations. So you see all these will also be extracted automatically, and you can then start on a more deeper analysis on the obligations out of a new regulation. Here we have the confirmation button for the validation. So that is the human aspect that we want to bring in. And you should have within the process as well, because it's not 100% the case at the moment, also on a legal perspective, that you can completely rely on results generated by AI technology. That's why it's very important to have that quality assurance aspect within here as well. So what is also important for an effective legal change management, you should be able to get subscription services as well, of course. If you don't want to log in every day into the system, you might want to have notification alert settings for specific topics that you are responsible for in your compliance department, for example, and that should really help you in your daily work to be more efficient with your time and resources. So now you have this repository where you have all the validated information related to legal and regulatory aspects. You might want to get into a more detailed analysis now to prepare the decision and the implementation steps. So what is very helpful is what we have here also implemented, the chatbot. We name it as Rethinky. So with a chatbot functionality here, specifically, you are definitely aware of and also have experience with ChatGPT. And here, the more or the specific part here within this model is that we can select specific documents, and the analysis will rely on the information of the documents only. So you will not get much risk on hallucinations because it sticks quite closely to the documents that you want to analyze. So as you are also, you might also be aware of the prompting knowledge that you might want to not really get the right answer with one question. You might want to start with a more generic question. Here in that example, we took the new AI, Artificial Intelligence Act from the EU, and we asked about the scope. We ask about the legal framework that is stated, that is described within this document. And now we are curious on the risk-based approach that is mentioned within this document, within this act. And we want to ask about the different risk levels that has been distinguished, and also mentioned in the document in order to get more information on that. So here, by having the risk list, we now can ask more details on the requirements tied to these different risk levels. So we can ask what needs to be done for an acceptable risk. So, and what if we raised an AI system as high risk? What are the requirements for those AI systems? So now you get a quite high level answers, but of course now you can get into more details and, for example, jump into the high risk level and then ask more questions about it. And you, as you have this preview here on the right hand side, you can always also go directly into the original document in order to get the information that you need for the following steps. So as I mentioned before, we would like to show you as well a short demonstration of how to implement it after now you've learned about the new regulation. So you might want to create a new policy. So with that part, what we want to demonstrate here is how to get the metadata and meta information of the new policy into a system to have it digitalized as a prerequisite for the governance steps afterwards. So that will become clear with this demo here. So here on that first part, you will get all the meta information to this new EU AI Act policy. You can link it to a SharePoint or to any other systems where you have the actual physical guideline. And then with further information on this new guideline, for example, on the compliance risk area, but also the affected products and services, if you are within the financial sector. And then you also choose geographical information that should be related to that regulation and also guideline, and the system will automatically identify which of your local entities need to apply this new policy. On the procedure level, that what you see here is you get more on an operational level. For each procedure, you will have a so-called control matrix, where you get here in our specific example, we have these 4 risk levels for AI systems, and now you can check the rules for each of these risk level. You see high risk level, of course, with the most extensive rules. And for unacceptable risk, for example, you can mark those AI systems are prohibited in your organization according to the new guidelines, for example. This global guideline or policy is, of course, now read-only, so it cannot be changed since it has been distributed to all your local organization. And that means you can now go into the local organization and want to review and also confirm that you want to implement or you will implement this global policy into your local organization. This is a quick overview of how you could do that on a local perspective, so you are not on a global perspective anymore. So you will not be able to change overall information of the policy, but on an operational level, you can adjust internal or also external requirements, because sometimes you might have additional regulations on your country level and you might want to adjust a global policy. So you will have to provide an explanation and everything is tracked within an audit trail, and you can start the approval process within the compliance process. So that is one part of the how you can implement it. Of course, you can have even more aspects, how you can integrate different use cases, different process steps together. So for example, our obligations that you have seen in the beginning on within our repository can be compared to the control matrix, and then you get even more integrated process when you get an automated generated impact analysis on both external and internal perspectives. So thank you so far for following me for that use case, and I would like to give back to Dirk.
Yep. Thank you, Karen. Very impressive, and indeed we got some questions. As we have 5 minutes left, I would like to go through them. I guess what you showed in the regulatory change and the policy and procedure management is also, let's say, answering the first question, how to integrate the legal changes to the risk assessment. So you first have external obligations. The external obligations are gathered by the regulations. And the other documents I mentioned, that is filling in the external obligation register, and you have out of your policy and procedure management and your controls the internal obligation management, and you can map them. The question was how to get it into the risk assessment. And if we look on the internal obligations, you have the obligations, and based on the obligations, you have the risk assessment objects. So for those risk assessment objects, they're derived out of the obligations. You have your risk assessments to do. Within the risk assessments, you define your mitigations, and out of the mitigations, you also have, let's say, a link to the controls. So if you do this consistently, you have the data points to integrate both, so that if you have a change on the regulation side, the tool can tell you, you please adopt procedure number 4711. Make sure that your risk assessment XYZ will be added or gets an additional risk object to assess on, and just ensure that you have the right controls in place. So that's the kind we can integrate external changes through the policy and procedure and controls framework to the risk assessments. There was one question about whether we use only regulatory information. No, we also, as mentioned, we also use it to gather the guidelines, the directive, the enforcement cases, and multi other document types that we add into our regulatory register as well. Then there was one question, can the web crawler be used for other purposes than legal changes? As I mentioned, so we have different document types, but in general, you can define by your own searches what the web crawler needs to look for and how to get you updated by those changes. So that's a yes on this question. And then there was a question: how do you train large language models? We don't train them, because that's not in our in our focus. What we do is we try to stay large language model agnostic as best as we can. And how we do it is we have a sort of a layer around those large language models where we ensure the, let's say, the quality, what to ask for, how to, let's really keep close to the text, which is for any legal person relevant. You don't work with a summary, you always work with the specific paragraph. So ensuring that the large language model is that accurate in answering the questions, that's what we take care about. But that's not training the language model. We don't do that. It's can OpenAI, Microsoft can invest in that, others can invest in that. We don't do it. And I would not even tell you what kind of large language model will be in the market for the next 5 years. That's why we try to keep it agnostic to the large language models. Those were the questions, I guess. So I did it in 4 minutes. Of course, if you have more questions, just send them by email, info@msg-compliance.com. We will do our best to get you the appropriate answers to your questions as well. And we would love to see, or at least have you as participants in our next webinars as well. You can stay connected with us by using LinkedIn or whatever. And of course, you will receive the recording session. You will receive it by an email information afterwards. So thank you for your time. Thanks for attending our webinar. Thank you, Khan, for this impressive presentation. And yeah, wish you all a nice day, a successful day, and even if there is a Friday in between, also a nice weekend. Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.